Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, Josh. How you been?
Yeah, doing great, thanks. And so excited to be able to speak to you today because I'm a long-time fan of your work. And it
Oh,
was so
thank
much
you.
fun to see you show up in this movie as Ramon. And, when we meet your character, he's got his hand on the trigger. You're part of this very tense exchange with Snag. So, what did you enjoy about being introduced in such, I think, a fun way in this movie?
I think the work I had to do was what happened before this, right? What kind of relationship, what kind of encounters I've had with him prior to the first time they introduced me in the movie. And the fact that he's got his hand in the trigger makes him unaware whether or not it was left off the right way or not. So they got that kind of like in this world that Ben created in Snag. It's like not everybody is just black or white, good or bad. It's a lot of complicated issues dealing with this kind of world. And I think that I enjoyed the fact that I used my imagination to see, well, what happened last. What was, when was the last time I saw him? What happened? And
Yeah.
then you think about all that, and then that's how you create the choices you make when you're shooting those scenes.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, when you're working with Ben, he's your co-star and your director. So when you're sharing the screen with the guy who is obviously usually behind the camera, does it change your approach to your scenes as an actor, or is it very much of a muchness for you?
No, it doesn't change my approach. I get a lot more specific information about what's wanted in the scene when the person I'm doing the scene with is also directing and wrote it as well, or
Yeah.
co-wrote it. Um, no, I there's really no difference. I loved working with Ben. You couldn't tell he was the guy in charge because he was so involved in his own character.
Mm.
And unbeknownst to me, he goes behind the scenes to deal with the technicality of directing this movie and the style that he wants to direct it in. And then as an actor, he comes in and we're just working off each other.
Oh, that's so interesting. And of course, without getting into any spoilers, but you're part of a really great action scene in the movie. And there are some brilliant moments between your character and obviously CJ Perry's character. And she's playing this Terminator-like villain. She comes from that pro wrestling world. And what was that like for you? Quite unique to work together?
Well, she's just so pleasant to be around. It was I was surprised because you would think that character's going to be a big guy with
Mm.
all these weapons, and it wasn't. But she was just as ferocious as anybody I could imagine, any man I could imagine doing that part. So yeah, it was something of it was great to observe it and then react to it in the scene. So yeah, and like I said, CJ, she's just amazing. She's fantastic.
Oh, for sure. And I know obviously in a lot of other projects you've worked on, you have handled weaponry before. So it's not something new for you coming into this movie. But was there much in the way of training and preparation, or was it quite easy for you to just be thrown into the deep end, so to speak?
Well, they were very good in how they handle weapons in that movie. The people that were involved in it, the safety people, the stunt coordinators, everybody was on top of every specific moment when there had to be a gun involved. So I appreciated that because that's not always the case, right? So in this case, I felt very safe. There was no, you know, no spot, everything's going to be done afterwards. So there was no like blanks or anything like that. So I felt, and also I was in the military. I was a police officer for 15 years. So I'm very familiar with guns, with weapons, even though I don't really like them, but I'm very familiar with them because I had to from my past jobs.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm guessing, again, you do see some action, but were you able to avoid walking away from this movie without any bumps or bruises? Or because I know you get thrown around a little bit, especially with some of your scenes with CJ.
Well, I don't want to spoil it. You don't want to know. You don't want to know what happens to me. Or let me just rephrase that. The audience doesn't want to know yet until they see the movie. So
It's such a fun role. But, you mentioned, I think it's really interesting. Obviously, you mentioned this history between Ramon and Snag. And was that something, I know you said you thought about it, but did you talk to Ben about that? Or was it more thinking privately and almost coming up with a backstory in your own head for who this guy is and what's led him to where we find him in this gas station with this just array of weaponry?
No, I spoke to Ben about the scene. As for the history of it, that was my own imagination, and I think it's good for the scene that he doesn't know what. I mean, my interpretation of our last meeting could be very different from his character's interpretation of the meeting. So, and I like that, variable and how you make certain choices based on that. Like I believe there's a line that says, "I don't remember if when we left off if we were okay or not." And that's the kind of world these characters live in. So I just use my imagination for my own tracking of how this scene should work. And then he had his, and after some adjustments, we found a really good part in that scene to actually connect with.
Yeah, for sure. And while I have you, I love Dexter, and I thought it was great seeing you back as Batista in New Blood. So I'm curious, how did you feel about your character finally learning the truth the way he did, and obviously what ultimately became of Dexter? Because we didn't see his reaction to that, of course.
Well, the name of the show is Dexter, so it's his story, his journey, and ever since season 1, I was just part of someone that was telling this story or trying to create circumstances where the audience can see where Dexter's mind is at. First of all, I was ecstatic that they even called me to be a part of New Blood. It was like, yeah, would you like to come and do a couple of episodes? I go, yeah, just tell me where to go and I'm there. And so it was fun to do. It was fun to watch. And that's the character I spend the most time in the business. So it's something that Batista is true to my heart, and I love that character. He's still alive, just so you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of prequel, sequel, and spin-off talk. I know Showtime are trying to figure out what to do. So, of course, could be more Angel in your future as well, of
Maybe.
course.
Hey, I'll welcome it. I'll welcome it.
And talking of the future, when I spoke to Ben, he did tell me he's got some sequel ideas for Snag. And again, no spoilers, but there's some ambiguity about the way things end for your character. And nothing's set in stone in this world, it feels like. There's a lot of twists and turns. So would you like to come back and maybe continue exploring this guy in a sequel if the chance comes up?
I would love to work with Ben again. I would love to play this character again. Yes, I would welcome that.
Oh, for sure. And just one final question for you, David. I thought it was great in this movie, seeing the combination of English and Spanish, handled in a very respectful and I think an important way for a movie like this. There's no cliches as such. So what did it mean to you to come into a movie like this and have that authenticity and that sort of diversity in front of the camera?
I think it's wonderful. I think it's great. I think Ben was very open as to the interpretation of English to Spanish, and and some of the other actors are just amazing. Latinx actors, Anna Ortiz, and there's so many great characters in this story, and to have a portion of them be Latino, because we don't get too many opportunities. We should get more to tell our stories. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I think Ben is a thoughtful guy. Ben knows, how to present certain characters and how to be authentic and positive about it. So
awesome. Well, great to see you kicking some ass in this one, David. And it's such a pleasure to speak to you. So thank you so much for your time today. Can't wait for everyone to see you in this one.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it.
Have a great one. Thanks so much.